Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to make this frog cake, which is inspired by the ones I've seen on Pinterest and TikTok, and it is so good I would literally do this to it.
Oh, yay, look, there's a piece that doesn't have flour on it.
Stick to your side.
Come on now.
All right, what are we having?
Okay, now I'm going to show you how to make it. So to start off, I put some frosting onto the turntable so that the cake wouldn't slide when I frost it. And for this cake, I use vanilla cake layers with American buttercream frosting. And I leveled my cake layers after freezing them for just a couple of hours. So here you can see that the cake is kind of cut off on one edge, and this happened when I was trimming the cake layers. And I feel like most bakers don't really show how to fix this, so later in the video I'm going to show you how. And then I added my second layer of frosting, and something I like to do is add the last layer upside down so that when I'm frosting it, it's smooth on top and it makes it look better. And here you can see what I was talking about earlier. Some cake crumbs were coming along with the frosting, and so I tried to put some cake into the gap to fill it in, but this didn't work because it just kept falling out. So what I did was I took that piece of cake out and I put the cake in the fridge. You can also do freezer, which I recommend. I just didn't have enough space in my freezer. So then after the cake hardened a little bit, I went over it with more frosting and filled in that gap with frosting to fix it. And then I just frosted the rest of the cake and did a thin crumb coat. After this, I made some pistachio green frosting and frosted the cake for a second layer. After doing the second coat, I took some white frosting and used it for the stem of the mushroom. You can do multiple layers for this because it's kind of hard to get it smooth out and look like thick. So after you do this, you can take some colored frosting. I use blue and yellow, and I alternated them. And if you want, you can do all the whites first and then put it in the fridge and then go through with the mushroom colors and smooth it out, because that might make it easier so that the blue and the white don't blend. But either way works. This worked for me too. I didn't put it in the fridge. So yeah, you can do either one. And after you get it smooth, I just went through and did all the whites to make it easier so I don't have to keep switching colors with the spatula. And then I started doing yellow. And to get it really smooth, just go in one direction. One direction. Anyways, it helps to do a few strokes and see how smooth you want it and how you like it. Another tip is to count how many mushrooms you're doing. So if you're doing one color, it doesn't matter, but since I did two, I don't like it when like two blues would be touching or two yellows would be touching. So I went through and counted and made sure it was an even number so that it would alternate perfectly. So yeah, that's how I did the mushrooms. After the first few, you kind of get used to it and it becomes a little bit easier. And next, spontaneously, I decided I wanted to add a lake. So I took some blue frosting and smoothed it out, and I added some texture to it so that it'd look more like water. And I also put this in the fridge for a little bit so that it'd become harder, so that when I add the lily pads and the frogs, it would be easier to work with. And in the meanwhile, I took some extra cupcakes that I made and added some frosting to it to make cake pops, because for the frogs, I was using cake pops, since I didn't really want to use frosting because I felt like that'd be too much frosting. And plus you can eat these like separately and stuff, so yeah. To make the cake pops, I didn't really use any measurements. I just kind of added frosting as I went and till I got the texture that I wanted. And since I was making two frogs, I split the cake pops in half. And to get the shape of the frog, I used one hand as a base and I kind of made that hand flat. And then with the other hand, I went through and shaped it. It's kind of like a sculpture, I guess. I've never really done one, but I'm assuming this is what it'd be like. And I did the same thing for the second frog until I got it really flat, and I put it in the freezer just so it'd harden up and it'd be easier to frost. And then I inserted a toothpick into the cake pop, and I made some darker green frosting for the frog. And so I started by just putting a bunch of frosting all over the frog, and, well, I should say all over the cake pop. And then after the whole cake pop was covered in frosting, I started to smooth it out. And it would actually be easier to use an acetate sheet if you have one, but I don't have one, so if you don't, you can use an offset spatula like how I did. And what I did was go through and do a bunch of streaks to smooth it out. And it helps when the cake pop is frozen because that makes a frosting easier to spread. And I did the same thing for the second cake pop. I actually had some trouble with the second one for some reason. It might have been the placement of the toothpick. But what you can do is set it down and frost it, and then bring it back up and smooth it out. And so this worked for me. And then I just put in the freezer for a little bit more, and then I started to work on my lily pads in the meantime. And I made 2 big ones so that the frogs could sit on them, and I smoothed it out with an offset spatula, and I added more frosting to make it a little bit bigger. And then I just placed the frogs, and then I did the second one, same thing. I made this one a little bit bigger because you can see on the first one you can't really see the lily pads, if you're looking from this angle at least. And then I went through and added smaller lily pads, and I wanted to add some flowers on top. After this, I just added some grass on the edges. I guess it's grass. We can just call it grass. So yeah, I added some grass on the edges. And then I made some light pink frosting and added it on the lily pads and the grass patches. I guess we can call them grass patches. After this, I went through and added some tiny pink hearts with the same color just to make it more cute. And this is how the top looked at this point. I used the same green color for the eyes. I did a little dollop, I guess, for the eyes. And don't worry, I know it looks a little creepy right now, but I'll go through and add its eyeballs later. And I did the same thing for its arms, and at the end, I did a little squeeze for its hands. And I did the same thing for its legs. I just added a little line. And you can add some shoes too if you want to get creative. I just didn't have enough space for that. And to match the whole theme, I added some hearts that they were holding in between their hands, which I thought was really cute. And of course, we can't make the frogs unhappy, get it? So I added a smile. Back to the mushrooms I almost forgot about. I added some white dots to them to make them look more like mushrooms. And this wasn't hard, I just took a really small circle tip. And yeah. And then using the same frosting and tip, I did the white eyes so that they don't look really creepy. Even though you could do black, but I didn't want to make a whole nother colored frosting, so yeah. And then I went through on the edges and did some white dots for a border, which you don't really have to do. I was planning on doing it before the whole pond spontaneous thing, so yeah. And yeah, that's the final cake. And now I'm going to show you a clip of me cutting it in my really big winter snow coat, which I failed at because it was way too cold to cut.
This is tasty.
If you don't understand that, it's from Avatar The Last Airbender, where this guy named Sokka was sucking on frogs because he was sick from drinking cactus juice, and it sounds really weird. It's a really long story, but basically he liked the frogs, which is a representation of me when I was eating this cake. So yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for better content in the future. And yeah, have a good day.